Oh, hello. Welcome once again to Speakeasy. Please, sir, I'll ask you not to look at me.
I'm sorry, I thought you were actually speaking to someone. Your acting was so good. I turned to see, oh, it's Paul.
Welcome to Speakeasy with Paul F. Tompkins. I am still Paul F. Tompkins. My guest this time you'll recognize from his countless film appearances. Please welcome star of stage, screen, and dare I say radio? You've done some radio, right?
Oh, yeah, that much.
Please say hello to Michael Sheen, OBE. Yeah, that's right. I like to throw in some initials and titles, and honorifics when I can. Cheers. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's a delightful mojito.
It is very nice. It's like drinking sort of naughty lemonade.
Naughty lemonade.
Yes.
Mojito, the naughty lemonade. What does OBE stand for?
OBE stands for Officer of the British Empire, which I think will appeal to you with your sense of tradition in the past.
I love it already.
It's an honour that is bestowed by Our Majesty the Queen. You go to Buckingham Palace and you sort of walk along this line through all these corridors and, you know, sumptuousness. And then you go into this big room and there are representatives of all the armed forces around the Queen's Commonwealth Empire. Then there's up in the balcony area of this very large room, there is soldiers in an orchestra playing T for two and two on violin. I mean, it's bizarre. There's a whole actual army orchestra up in the gallery. And then there are people, all your friends and the people that you invite to come with you, family or whatever.
Unlimited guest list?
No, not unlimited. You're only good question, good point, because I've got an interesting thing to say about this. You're only supposed to have 3 people with you. And when I went, my daughter, who lives here in Los Angeles, also happened to be in Britain at the time. So I was like, oh, it's my mum, my dad, my girlfriend, my daughter. I don't want to ask anyone to miss out here.
Yeah.
So special dispensation from the palace. I'm not sure if the Queen was asked, but clearly she didn't mind. And I was told, yes, 4, you can have 4. But in the car on the way there, I said to my daughter, who was she must have been about sort of 8 or 9 at the time, I said, you know, Lily, really, I was only supposed to bring 3 people, but I was allowed to bring 4 with one stipulation, that one stays behind at the palace and lives there. Me! And then I told her, and this is an actual true story, that someone who works for Prince Charles once told me that at Buckingham Palace, because he doesn't live at Buckingham Palace, he lives in another palace.
Yeah, he's moved out and found his own place.
Yeah, eventually. She chucked him out. Liz said, come on, Charles.
Yeah, you're 18.
This is ridiculous. Get a job. Which he never did. So he lives in another palace, and someone who works for him said that when they go to visit Buckingham Palace, she always likes to go under the palace because there's a whole city under the palace. There's a whole thing. They have their own post office under the palace, under the ground. So there's all these like things that like stores and things that are just for the palace, to supply the palace, which of course makes sense. You never think about it, but yeah, of course. And of course it's underground. And in one little corner, she said, there's an old man who, his job is to go around the entire palace every day, checking the clocks are all at the right time. And if one is broken, he takes it back down to his little workshop in the corner under the palace and fixes it. And he's this little old man. She said he never has anyone visiting him. So the first thing she always does when she goes to the palace with Charles, down there and visits the little old man. So I told my daughter this, and she said, I'll go and live with him. I'll stay behind and I'll live with him. And I thought there is an entire series of books or movies there.
The Clocksman's Apprentice? Absolutely.
You get in line and then you go up to the Queen and she's got the Lord Chamberlain standing next to her, whispering in her ear about who's coming up. Michael Sheen, he's that one who was in that film about you.
And now you can see this happening too.
Yeah, you can see him
the guy whispering.
Yeah, it's like the worst party ever, where someone has to like remind the host who you are. But you walk up, and you've been told already. There's a whole etiquette thing that you go through. You have a quick class. And you're not supposed to call her, you call her Her Majesty initially, and then from then on you call her ma'am. And it's ma'am as in ham, not ma'am as in farm.
Right.
And you never turn your back on the Queen. It's the worst thing you can do. So you get.
But she'll fly into a rage.
Oh, she goes crazy. She's known for it.
Oh,
she gets those devil eyes.
Exactly.
Like a lizard, it could go.
Yeah.
And then you get pushed from one person to another constantly. It's like a relay race all the way through the palace. You don't get lost. And then you get to the last one, and then he goes, off you go, off you go. And you walk over to her, and she comes up, she's the one from the film. And then she goes, hello, and she puts her hand out, and you're supposed to shake her hand. And you've been told that when she'll speak to you a little bit, she'll pin the medal on you, because you get an actual medal.
Yeah.
And then she'll put her hand out, And when she puts her hand out, it's over, it's done. And you shake hands with her, and then you walk backwards away from her.
Right.
And then at a certain point, the guy will go, okay, you're good. And then you can turn and go. That's what he's supposed to do.
This guy just waiting,
yeah.
waiting
Okay.
for you to back into him.
Yeah, exactly. Because imagine,
I've got you.
people must have done the craziest things. Because it is kind of like, I mean, Paul, I'm used to meeting famous people now.
Sure.
But there are certain people who are not. And the Queen is one of the most famous.
Yeah.
So you imagine, like, they just go, I mean, I'm sure people have gone crazy meeting you. People do odd things
People
if
do
they
odd
meet someone that they're kind
Yes.
of like, So imagine what she must deal with. Anyway, this will explain her later behavior.
Sure.
So I walk up, and she says, shakes my hand, and then she gets the medal out, and she pins it on me, and she says, it's a great opening line for anyone who wants to put someone at ease. So she puts it on me, and she goes, "This is an honor indeed for me to give this to you." And of course, you just feel like, oh my God, the Queen is impressed by me.
Right.
But then when you think about it, she's actually saying, it's an honor for me
Yes, exactly.
to be given it. Well, but anyway, it's a good one. It works.
It works either way.
Also, she says it to everybody. I later find out. Anyway, so that, and then she says, so what are you doing next? I thought, this is like a Hollywood party. Like, people are always kind of, so what are you up to now? What's going on? My agent said, what is she, an agent? Anyway, so I said, told a little lie. I told a fib to the Queen, because the next thing I was actually doing was Tron Legacy. I thought, I only get one answer here. I only get one chance at a conversational gambit with the Queen.
Right.
I'm reckoning she's not a big fan of the Tron franchise. So I'm going to leave. I'm going to eschew the Tron answer. And I said, I'm doing another film about Prime Minister Blair and his relationship with President Clinton. Mm-hmm. And a little sort of light went on in her eyes, and she went, "Oh, that must be awfully difficult." I said, "Yes, it is." And then we had a little bit of chat about that, and then out came the hand.
Right.
I was like, right, it's over then. So I shake her hand, and then this is the thing. So she shakes your hand, and then shake my hand, and I'll do what she did to me, and then I'll explain what happens. So I'm the Queen. Mm-hmm. She shoves you. She shoves you away. Like, I know it's over, love.
Was it always acting for you since you were a kid?
Well, my family were very into performing then, let's say. Not so much acting, but they were in like musical theatre, amateur musical theatre and that kind of stuff. They loved, Gilbert and Sullivan.
Right.
When you're lying awake with a dismal headache and repose is tabooed by anxiety. I receive that kind of thing. So I grew up watching that kind of stuff, Pirates of Penzance and things like that. And the American classic musical theatre, Carousel, which until you've seen it done by middle-aged Welsh men and women who are by day teachers or something. You haven't seen it done at all, Paul, believe me. Fantastic musical, but that's what I grew up watching.
Yeah.
Which is why I despise musical theatre. So the end of that story should be, and that's why I'm not a huge fan. But I do kind of love it as well.
Yeah.
Love-hate. But I just remember going backstage, and seeing all these sort of, what seemed to me then, very old people with too much makeup on.
Yeah.
In weird costumes and going, la la la, with no talent.
Right.
And that gave me that kind of love of the smells backstage and all. I started doing school plays, and then I joined a youth theatre. Mm-hmm. And our local youth theatre, I now realise, was possibly the best youth theatre in the world, which, how would you know that at the time? It was just the local youth theatre. But it was amazing, and I've stayed in touch with that, and I've tried to sort of support it, because all the funding is very difficult now. So I've tried to do whatever I can to keep it going, because it's such an amazing thing. And I certainly wouldn't have had the career or the life I've had had it not been for that youth theatre. And then I started to take it more seriously, and then I started reading about the sort of history of theatre, and I've become someone who really enjoys process and understanding other people's process and taking it apart and analysing it and deconstructing it and stuff. And I think that began then. I started really reading a lot of theatre criticism by one particular person called Kenneth Tynan.
Yes.
Who is this amazing, possibly the greatest
legendary
theatre critic.
Yeah.
And he turned writing about other people performing into an art form in itself. And so reading his reviews of Laurence Olivier's theatre performances, which I wasn't ever going to see. He was, he'd already done his stage performances. So reading those reviews of him doing like Richard III and Othello and Oedipus and all these amazing performances gave me really the real kind of love of it. Like, that's what spurred me on. And I love the fact that he would write about people like Olivier doing Richard III, and then write about Danny Kaye doing, you know, Hans Christian Andersen or something. Like, there was no difference. He was talking about people, performers who just really have such a high definition in what they do. They really work it, and they have kind of courage and boldness and creativity and discipline and all these sort of things. And that gave me my kind of standard, I suppose. That's what I wanted to aim for, and that's what I wanted to do.
So now you're on Showtime's Masters of Sex, playing yet another real person. You've played a lot of real people in your career.
This is true. Yeah.
Do you feel that you've gotten your process down for that in terms of how you approach playing a person who actually lived? Because I'm sure that at first it can seem a little daunting if you don't want to dishonor the person. You want to do your own performance, but you certainly want to be as faithful as you can be to who the person actually was.
Yeah. Well, the big difference is whether people are how familiar they are with the person.
Yeah.
So, for instance, playing Tony Blair in The Queen or David Frost in Frost Nixon, certainly for a British audience, hugely familiar with those people, and not just with who they are, but what they look like, what they sound like, what their mannerisms are, just the kind of spirit of them. With William Masters, it's not the same thing. I'm not having to worry about that.
Right.
And in fact, with things like The Queen and Frost Nixon and films and performances like that, a big part of what your kind of raw material to play with is audience expectation. So you're actively using that as part of what you're playing with. Where no one really is familiar with Bill Masters. They might have heard of him and they might know a bit about what the work he was that he did, but they're not going to be sitting there going, no, didn't look like that, didn't sound like that.
Right.
No. I've based everything that I do as the character on what I read about him and what I know about him. But then I'm looking to make a connection with him because ultimately I'm playing me. I'm
right.
Not, you know, I've only got me to work on really, and then what I know about him. But my real raw material is myself and my own experiences. I can't play anyone that I don't connect with, and that's whether it's a werewolf in Underworld or a vampire in Twilight, whatever it is. I have to read the script, and something has to kind of resonate with me. Something has to connect with me.
Like it has to make emotional sense.
Emotional and imaginative sense.
Yeah.
I have to, because it can't just be an emotional connection as well. It has to kind of set my mind going. It has to make me project forward at where you could go with that character. What could you do, and what does it kind of spark off in my head?
Was doing a series in Los Angeles, was that an easy decision for you to make?
The idea of doing the same thing for a very long time was scary. It didn't put me off, but I was very wary of that. And because you want to feel like if you're doing something for that long, it has meaning to you. Like the projects I'd been doing just before that had so much personal meaning to me. This project I did in my hometown in Wales that was called The Passion of Port Talbot, which was the most personal project you could ever do, really.
This was a secular passion play?
Yeah, it was inspired by the passion play that I used to see growing up in Port Talbot that was done in a local park. And the National Theatre of Wales, that was a kind of...
And a passion play, if people don't know, it's the story of Christ's crucifixion.
It's the Passion of Christ, yeah. So it usually depicts the events building up to, including, and just after the crucifixion of Christ. And they're often associated with community, that the local community will put on a passion play. And there was this little one that got done in the park when I was growing up. And it had a big effect on me. I wasn't religious, and I'm not religious, but the story itself was very powerful. And seeing the community taking part in it, you know, grandmothers with their grandchildren and, you know, all that, and my teachers and people like that. And the fact that it took place outdoors as well. I thought I'd never seen people acting outdoors before. So that always had a big effect on me. And then I was approached by the National Theatre of Wales to do a production with them. And I ended up thinking, I'll do that. I'll do something along those lines. And I thought, I want to do something that is a universal story that isn't just Christian. You know, there's elements of pre-Christian things in there, and agricultural motifs and Dionysian things and all kinds of stuff. I thought it's a really interesting story, powerful story. And also everyone kind of knows it, whether you believe it or what, you know, everyone kind of knows that story. So I wanted to do something, because it was one performance that lasted for 72 hours non-stop, all over the town, in the streets and on the mountain and on the beach and on the roundabout and in people's houses and everywhere. And it began at Friday morning on the beach with about 200 people at about dawn watching it, and by the Sunday night there were 15,000 people all watching the end of it. It was extraordinary. My mum was in it, my dad and my teachers and my friends, and it was an incredible story. And it was a sort of mixture of the story of the town, the story of the Passion of Christ and my life, really. It was a sort of mixture of all the things.
It seems like a huge undertaking.
It took about 2.5 years to develop it and put on. We had one go at it.
Right.
We didn't know what the weather was going to be like, didn't know if anyone would turn up. I mean, it was extraordinary. There was a lovely spirit in the town because, you know, they knew who I am and they were all up for it, and they were all so pleased that I had come back to, oh, good on you for coming back, Michael, and all that. And actually, it wasn't altruistic and unselfish on my part. It was very selfish. I had an entire town to play with. They all let me do it. I could go into people's houses. I go, can I use your bathroom? I did. While I was carrying the cross, I did a 7-mile walk with this incredibly heavy cross through the town with thousands of people. And before we got to the crucifixion platform, I knew I had to go to the bathroom. And I knew this was the last house before I got there. And I whispered to the guy who was playing my brother, who was standing next to me, and there's thousands of people around us, and marching bands and orchestras and opera singers and everything. And I said, I've got to have a piss. I've got to have a pee. Ask them if I can go in their house. And so he went up to this man and woman standing on their balcony in their dressing gowns and with their kid in his pajamas. And he said, excuse me. Can Michael come in and use your bathroom, please? And they were like, all right then. And so I had to pretend I'd collapsed on the road, and I got carried into this man's house, and I was in his little bathroom having a pee, and I heard the woman outside going, did you put new towels in that bathroom? And he said, don't worry, love, it'll be like the Shroud of Turin.
Michael Sheen, thank you so much for being here. This has been a delight. The season 2 finale of Masters of Sex will be on Showtime September 28th. So get your pants down and watch that. That's your slogan, right?
That is.
Get your pants down. Thank you so much for being here. That does it for this edition of Speakeasy. Please join us again next time when my guest will be a different person. Over the course of the 72 hours, what happens in the middle of the night?
It was still performing. The first night I slept on the mountain, overlooking the town. Some local Boy Scouts made me some supper.
Do people watch you sleep?
There were people trying to watch me sleep. I woke up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I could just hear a man going, tell him I brought my son, he's a star.
I wanted to be a doctor, a heart doctor, cardiologist.
Sure. That's where the money is.
So I thought, that's actually the reason why I wanted to do it, because I thought I would make a lot of money, not because I wanted to save lives.